Scientists find that high-dose vitamin D acts as a hormone in the human body and may cure autoimmune diseases. Supplements such as vitamin D and E are essential for skin health, especially if fish or other recommended foods are not readily available. Sunshine hormone reveals surprising effects on various diseases at doses well beyond official guidelines. Vitamin D supplements are currently recommended at a dose of 600 international units IU per day by the National Institutes of Health, NIH, along with a warning about possible toxicities if people take more. But for some people, supplementing with what would be considered a very high dose of vitamin D each day may produce health benefits rather than toxicities, experts say. In 2019, certified pathologist Dr. Patrick McCullough published a report on the experiences of 3 patients who took high doses of 20,000 to 60,000 IUs of vitamin D daily for many years, all 3 of whom have since seen significant improvement in their health. One patient began supplementing with vitamin D3 8 years before the report was published and saw his asthma attacks drop from 5 or 6 severe exacerbations per year to just 1 severe exacerbation from 2011 to 2019. He was initially started on 10,000 IUs per day, but by the time the report was published, he stopped most of his asthma medications and was taking 30,000 IUs per day. Another patient's ulcerated hand lesion, which was thought to be a form of skin cancer, shrank after taking high doses. One patient had extensive psoriasis plaques on his scalp, forehead, and ears, as well as smaller plaques on his chest, abdomen, elbow, and thighs. He was given 50,000 IUs of vitamin D2 and soon saw a dramatic improvement in his psoriasis. His skin cleared up after a few months of treatment, and he was able to stop using steroid creams and medicated shampoos. While the clinical improvements are impressive, the doses these patients received, which would be considered potentially toxic, are particularly surprising. Adequacy versus optimal dose. The current NIH recommendations come from a 2010 dietary report from the Institute of Medicine, IOM. The report suggests a daily intake of 600 IU to achieve a serum level of 20 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D in the blood, an adequate amount. It set the upper tolerable limit at 4,000 IUs per day, so any dose higher than that would be considered high dose. However, some experts believe that current recommendations are not sufficient for optimal health. McCullough argued that current doses recommended by IOM are subnormal, meaning they are lower than the body's natural needs. Instead, McCullough suggested that 10,000 IUs per day would be an adequate physiological dose. His arguments have been echoed by other health professionals. Prior to the IOM recommendations, experts from the Council for Responsible Nutrition, CRN, suggested raising the maximum daily limit to 10,000 IUs per day after no toxicity was found in vitamin D clinical trials in which 10,000 IUs or even higher doses were administered. In 2011, the Endocrine Society similarly stated that up to 10,000 IUs daily is safe for adults. The differences in dosage limits are due to different estimates of the potential health benefits of vitamin D. The IOM's lower dosage recommendations are based primarily on vitamin D's role in promoting bone health by enhancing calcium absorption. However, the Endocrine Society and other experts argue that vitamin D may also play an important role in other systems and organs, suggesting that dosage be adjusted accordingly. And vitamin D is more than just a vitamin. Multiple studies show that vitamin D has a multitude of roles in multiple processes and organs. Most cells have a specific receptor for vitamin D, and when the vitamin D molecule binds to its receptor, it can activate about 2,000 genes in the body. Okay, so when vitamin D molecule binds to its receptor, it can activate about 2,000 genes in the body. Vitamin D expert William Grant, who has published more than 300 papers on vitamin D, told Epoch Times that vitamin D should be considered a hormone and not a vitamin. It should be considered a hormone, not a vitamin. Vitamins are micronutrients. The body uses of them in small amounts for their supporting role in health. Vitamin D, however, acts in many genetic pathways as a direct contributor rather than a helper, regulating calcium levels and parathyroid hormones and interacting with immune cells, he said. The nervous system, neurons, pancreatic cells, and more. Most importantly, while all other vitamins must be obtained through diet, the body naturally produces vitamin D from sunlight. Many studies have also shown that without sun exposure, it's quite difficult to get enough vitamin D through natural diet alone. Vitamin D deficiencies are linked to poor cardiovascular health, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, mortality, cognitive decline, infections, autoimmune diseases, and allergies. 600 IUs may not be enough for overall health, and for this reason, some experts suggest that vitamin D is needed in a much higher dose than recommended. Board-certified pathologist Dr. Anna Michalsea said most of her patients need 10,000 IUs per day to achieve optimal functioning with their cognition and energy levels. Many of her patients came to her with fatigue, muscle weakness, and poor cognitive abilities, which may be linked to vitamin D deficiencies, despite the fact that these patients are at adequate levels of 20 ng per ml. Since he raised their serum levels to 70 ng per ml or more using supplements, some of them saw great improvement. Michalsea says vitamin D deficiencies may have been the culprit for their symptoms. The optimal dose varies between patients. A surgeon and physician for more than 20 years, Dr. Joseph Bosiljevac, also reports wide variations in optimal vitamin D serum levels between different patients. He told Epoch Times that some patients see a lot of improvement once their level reaches 60 ng per ml and would consider that sufficient, but other patients may need 120 ng per ml or more. Studies have shown that vitamin D toxicities can develop when serum vitamin D levels reach above 150 ng per ml, although McCullough said he has seen some patients do well with more than 200 ng per ml. High doses of vitamin D as a drug. Doctors say that people with certain medical conditions may need more vitamin D than healthy people. Some people with terminal illnesses may have made great recoveries after being given high-dose vitamin D. The extra vitamin D can be used, quote, as medicine, not just as a preventive vitamin, end quote, Michalsea said. Research has shown that adequate levels of vitamin D can reduce the risk of many conditions, from cardiovascular disease to allergies. Autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases occur when the body's immune system begins to attack healthy tissue. They are associated with inflammation. Vitamin D regulates immune cell systems, reduces inflammation, and activates immune cells that neutralize autoimmune reactions. Some patients with autoimmune diseases are resistant to vitamin D. The person responds less to vitamin D supplements and sun exposure. Therefore, they need higher doses of vitamin D to raise their serum vitamin D levels to an appropriate range. The autoimmune expert, Dr. Cicero Coimbra, who wrote the famous Coimbra Protocol, found that many of his multiple sclerosis patients, MS patients, achieved remission after taking massive doses of vitamin D along with other supplements. The protocol can start at 150 IU per kilogram of body weight and can potentially be increased to doses of up to 1,000 IU per day per kilogram of body weight, provided that patients are regularly tested to ensure that parathyroid hormones, calcium, and other micronutrient levels are in balance. In an interview with Epoch Times, Coimbra said his clinic has treated more than 15,000 patients with autoimmune diseases such as multiple sclerosis, MS, with about 85% achieving remission. This protocol has also been used in rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, inflammatory bowel syndrome, psoriasis, and Crohn's disease around the world, with the majority of patients following these protocols reporting significant improvements. As for those who don't respond well to vitamin D treatment, Coimbra has noticed that most tend to experience high levels of stress, and it's only by changing the way they react to stress that they begin to see improvements. Cancer, high doses of vitamin D are associated with lower risks of cancer progression and mortality. Deficiencies in B vitamins, vitamin C, iron, zinc, magnesium, and selenium have been linked to increased risks of cancer. Observations and studies in cancer patients have found that vitamin D deficiency is also a risk factor. In 2016 report found that women whose vitamin D levels are elevated above 40 ng per ml had more than a 65% lower risk of developing cancer. Another 2019 study that followed patients with end-stage colon cancer found that those who increased their vitamin D levels experienced a slower worsening of their symptoms. Grant's research showed that vitamin D reduces the risk of cancer by affecting the differentiation, proliferation, and apoptosis breakdown of cells, preventing mortality by reducing the formation of new blood vessels to sustain tumor growth, and reduces metastasis. Since vitamin D works by blocking pathways that promote further cancer growth and metastasis, it's better at preventing cancer mortality than cancer incident, Grant said. It's worth noting that cancer can be caused by a multitude of factors, including environmental toxins, smoking, radiation, genetics, and inflammation, many of which cannot be controlled by vitamin D intake alone. And in addition, it's still uncertain whether vitamin D will be effective for all cancers, and the reason for the disease in cancer patients varies from one to another. However, there have been reports of cancer going into remission after taking high doses of vitamin D, although other factors may play a role in patients' recovery. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Judson Somerville, said that the wife of a patient was told by the highly prestigious MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas, that she had only 6 months to live because of advanced ovarian cancer. He figured he had nothing to lose, so she figured she had nothing to lose, so she started taking high doses of vitamin D along with magnesium. The patient's wife began to feel better, and after a few months went to the doctor for a checkup. They tested her to the surprise that she was found to be cancer-free, Somerville said. It's been almost 12 years and the cancer still has not come back. Brain health. Lower levels of vitamin D have been associated with a higher risk of anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and autism. Vitamin D regulates chemicals in the brain that help neurons in the cortex and hippocampus grow and survive. These two regions are involved in memory and cognitive functions, emotion processing, and complex motor functions. Mikhalsea said the brain fog her patients experienced as part of their deficiency would be revealed once they increased their vitamin D levels. Psychiatrist Dr. John J. Cannell said in an interview with ZME Science that in treating children with autism, he found that giving a higher dose of 5,000 IUs per day helped nearly 80% of those children with their symptoms. He said, "My experience, having treated about 100 children with autism, is that 25% respond dramatically to high-dose vitamin D, 50% respond significantly, and 25% do not respond at all," he said. How much vitamin D is necessary? The certified pathologist, Dr. Syed Haider, recommends a certain amount of sun exposure as the best option for vitamin D intake, as it is impossible to develop toxicities from sun exposure, as the body has a mechanism that prevents further production. However, with most people living in urban areas and being indoors for most of the day, taking supplements is probably the most convenient option. A person can supplement with either plant vitamin D, known as ergocalciferol, or animal vitamin D, also known as cholecalciferol. The two vitamins are not synonymous with each other. When ingested, the body produces different metabolites. Between the two, doctors tend to prescribe D2 as it is more commercially available, but the more recommended version is D3. the body absorbs it better and it's also lasting longer in the body. Additionally, D3 may be less associated with toxicities as the body is more tolerant of it. It's recommended to take vitamin D alone with K2 and magnesium when supplemented, as this avoids vitamin D toxicity. Both K2 and magnesium help deposit calcium in the bones rather than the arteries, and therefore prevent hypercalcemia, which can occur as a result of vitamin D toxicity. Michalkea emphasized the point, consideration of serum vitamin D levels as a guide to dosing, as the following conditions can all affect vitamin D absorption: inflammation, stress, obesity, poor gut health. The endocrinologist and vitamin D specialist Dr. Michael Holick found that obese people tend to be deficient because of the extra fat in their bodies binds more vitamin D in their cells instead of letting it float freely in the serum. So obese people tend to need more times than the recommended dosage. This is from the Epoch Times. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.